So it's the heat of summer, and my mind has already started switching to duck season and deer season and things like that. I wanted to do a little video about the Tactacam 6.0 and how I use my settings, how I want my camera set up going into a duck hunt. So the Tactacam 6.0, the Tactacam Solo Xtreme, they'll both be how I do the settings for those in this particular video. Before I get into the settings and the, how many frames per second and what I like my green, blue, and light blue settings at, I want to show you this. This is the original shotgun mount. This is a 5.0. You can just see, this is the base, like that's how much was attached to your gun, and you can look in there and see how much padding there was to keep your gun from getting scuffed up and stuff. The new version is much improved. Definitely worth the upgrade. You can see in here there is nowhere that your if I can focus, there's nowhere that your barrel of your gun actually will touch this. They have these removable padding pieces here that, depending on what size gun, if you're using a 20 gauge, or I've had a 410 on these, if you're using a 20 gauge or a 16 gauge or a 12 gauge, you get the right one for you, and you just pop them in here, and they've got some little holes that keep them from sliding around. And now I'm ready to tighten that down on my shotgun. It's got 3 different screws here that will clamp it down against your gun, and it's super tight. And then you've got 2 screws here. Right now it's set up for a Solo Xtreme, so it comes with these little rubber bushing things. You can slide your Solo Xtreme in there, tighten those back down, and you're ready to go. You've got a lot more contact with your barrel up here on top, and your camera goes in here. If I don't want to use my Solo Xtreme, I just pop these out. These little rubber pieces come out, and now I can use my 6.0. So great improvement here. This thing itself is worth having. Even if you're just using like a 5.0, this is worth ordering and getting to use with your 5.0, because these, they could occasionally scratch your gun. You had contact with the gun. You had very little contact with the barrel, so you had a tendency of it to move. I ended up running 2 of them. One on the front, one on the back for a long time. It seemed to help. This is a much improved product, so worth looking at. Alright, so let's get into the cameras themselves. So we'll start with the Tactacam Solo Xtreme. Alright, so I'm going to get this Solo Xtreme hooked up, put on my phone, and then we will sync it to our app. So I've pushed the button, it's coming on. It immediately is recording, so I'm going to pause that recording. Hold down the mode button back here behind it. You'll feel it vibrate. You'll see that light come on flashing blue. That lets me know we're looking for Wi-Fi. So I'll go into my phone. I'll see a Tactacam Solo Xtreme. I'll click that. It's going to take a second to connect. Once it does, I'm going to go into my Tactacam Connect app, and I'm going to click on Solo Xtreme. Okay, so Solo Xtreme's pulled up. I'm going to connect to it. It's going to probably say join the first time you do this. I've already connected to this camera before, so I won't have to do that. Once I get in here, I can see my my signal's good. I got 100% battery. I got 336 minutes of video left. I'm going to hit Control. And now I've got 3 different settings across the top: green, dark blue, and then light blue. The Solo Xtreme's a little different than the 6.0 as far as how you set it up. It's a cheaper camera. It doesn't have 4K, so you're getting a little bit more what you pay for. But it's a great camera. Down at the bottom, I can zoom it in. If I want to do full zoom, I can zoom it all the way back out. So here's how I set mine up. And then I set both of them up, but they're just slightly different because of the way the cameras are. Green is like the sun is up, the birds are flying, it's an hour into the hunt, we're past gray light. I want to be in green. Green, go. That's kind of how I remember it. So if I go to this little wheel over here on the side, up in the right corner, that'll get me into the settings. So for video size, I want to be at 2560 by 1440, 30 frames a second. That's like good quality video. 2K, I guess, would technically be the definition of that. Somebody that knows cameras better might be able to tell me that. 30 frames a second is a good amount of frames a second. It's not going to be too dark. You're going to be able to slow it down some and have some good kill shots and stuff like that. So 2560 by 1440 at 30 frames a second is like my default. I spend 90% of the time in that. and that's where green, I spend a lot of time in the green one. So I want to make sure image stabilization is on, right here, make sure it is on. I want vibration on. I like having the vibration on for duck hunting. That way I can feel it up my gun, you know, on my barrel. If battery goes dead, or if I hit the button, I should, you know, my remote, if I hit the button on my remote, I should feel my barrel vibrate a little bit, let me know it's come on or it's recording. So I like to have that feedback for duck hunting. Go down here to auto rotate and turn that off. I don't like auto rotate. Once on the first hunt of the year last year, we didn't realize what that would do. So it kind of seemed like when you turned it on, if your barrel was laid sideways, that's how it was going to record that whole video. So we kind of started turning that off. I don't know if maybe I just did that wrong, but that's how we did that. So I turned it off. I go ahead and leave red dot off. I'm not a red dot fan. If you are, you would turn red dot on, and it'll be in the middle of your screen. I don't like leaving blackout on. I turn blackout off, and I'll show you why and how easy fix to that. I don't want to be confused about whether my camera's on or off, so I just leave blackout turned off. I've got loop record off, slow motion off. I'll slow it down post video, post hunt if I want to do that. So that's my settings for green. I do no zoom for green. I don't want any zoom on this. The upgraded image stabilization already zooms them in a little bit more than like the 5.0. With my 5.0, when I used to hunt with it, I would zoom it nearly all the way in, if not all the way in, to get those good up close shots. Well, the image stabilization and the zoom, the lens zoom is already improved on the 6.0 and the Solo Xtreme, so you don't need to zoom it all the way in. I did that on some hunts early on because I didn't realize that it's such a big difference in the zoom, so don't zoom it all the way in. There's no need to. Dark blue is what I consider first light. Like it's just legal shooting time. That first 30 minutes when it's dark gray light, you can see pretty good, but cameras don't see pretty good. So what I do for the dark blue meaning dark part of the hunt, I'm going to be zoomed all the way out again. I'm going to go into my settings, and I'm going to go to video size, and I'm going to make it 1920 by 1080 15. So 15 frames a second. So that's your best video at dark light. And if it's a dark cloudy day, it's still going to be tough to see at very first light. That's all cameras. That's standard across every camera. 15 frames a second, really dark, might be tough, but that's your best quality, your best chance of getting a good video is using 15 frames a second. So, and that's your only option for 15 frames a second, 1920 by 1080, which is still HD, still going to be a good quality video. So the only other thing I would check all that same stuff, image stabilization on, vibration on, auto rotate off. So the next one, this light blue one, cyan I think is what they technically call it, I do this one if I want to get some good slow motion video. So I will zoom it in just a little bit, like 20%, 25%, just barely any. That may not even be 20%, but I want it zoomed in just a hair. And then I'll go to my settings, and I will change my video size to 60 frames a second, 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames a second. And I'll explain to you why I don't do 120. At 60 frames a second, I can do image stabilization. If I turn this to 1280 720 and I go down to image stabilization, it's off. If I turn it to on, it'll switch it back to off. You can't do image stabilization and have 120 frames a second. I'd rather have the image stabilization, and I'll just not slow it down quite as much maybe. So I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to go to video size, and I'm going to change that back to 60. So I'm at 60 frames a second, HD 60 frames a second, and I'm going to go down to back to image stabilization, turn that back on, and you can see it stays on this time. So I've got vibration on, auto rotate off, slow motion off, all that stuff. So we're all good in our settings. That's how I like to run my Solo Xtreme. I've got some awesome video from the Solo Xtreme. It's one of my favorite cameras. It really is. You can find this for 150 bucks, and it's incredible for what you can record with this. I'll insert some videos, some kill shots using the Solo Xtreme. I didn't use it as much. I would put it on like my dad's gun or my kid's gun, and I was running the 6.0. But watching the video, this was really an impressive camera. So keep that in mind if you're looking to buy one of these. And to switch these modes, you just push this button. Well, maybe you don't do it while you're in Wi-Fi. All right, So I've disconnected the Wi-Fi. It's searching for Wi-Fi right now. I guess I could hold that down and turn it off so it's not searching anymore. All right, so if I was on a hunt, I've got it paused right now. So I would turn it on, pause it, and then I can just push this button to go through those settings, and I will feel it vibrating when it switches settings. So I want to start the hunt off in dark blue. I would power this off. We get out to hunt, it's shooting light. I'm going to press this button either on my remote or on the camera itself, and within just a matter of a couple seconds, it's on and recording. You can feel it vibrating. It's in dark blue mode. I don't know if it's going to reflect that on this camera, but it's in the dark blue mode, and it is recording in 15 frames a second. If I want to switch, so it's 30 minutes later, the sun's up, I'm going to pause the camera, and I'm going to push this mode button till I get to green. Green is sun's up, 30 frames a second, 2K, and then I'll hit that button again and I'll be recording. So that's how I run my Solo Xtreme. Really impressive little camera, really something you ought to look into getting for duck hunting.